Well, hey everybody, I'm Jack, and this is Raw Tropical Living. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you're all having a really nice weekend out there. I'm having a lovely Saturday here in South Alabama, just lazing around the house a little bit, feeding the squirrels. Went and got some fruit a little while ago, and it's about time for that weekend video. Today I've got a little reading for you and just kind of a little talk I wanted to give on releasing judgment and practicing compassion. Guys, I do videos every day, so if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you'd go down below and hit that big red subscribe button, then click on the little bell and check send notifications so you'll stay subscribed to the channel. And also too, let me put a plug in for the store. Please go into the description below and check out the store, Raw Tropical Living Gear, for all your vegan apparel needs. Releasing judgment and practicing compassion is something that I've been focused on, working on for quite a while, but I've been more aware of it and really been paying attention to it over the course of the last, I don't know, year and a half or so. I tend to judge myself a little bit, not like most people talk. I tend to judge like myself when I'm being judgmental. Now, when I talk about some of this stuff, and we probably all have this to a certain extent, and honestly, I don't really have as much of a problem with it if it's not spewed out, and if it's not, you know, in other words, like I don't put my judgments on other people. But even in my head, I've tried to kind of get out of that mentality, getting out of that, you know, looking at other people or their situations or just anything and just being judgmental about it. And practicing compassion, that is just something that I have to always work on. I think I've told you guys before, or if you haven't figured it out, I'm not the most emotional person in the world. I do have signs from time to time. I know I'm not a sociopath. I know I'm not dead completely inside, because I'll see something that touches me and I'll feel those intense emotions. And I feel extreme compassion towards certain people, things, and situations. But I just like, I would like that compassion to just be spread a little bit. I would like for it to not be conditional. Like, in other words, I think I should just probably be, as much as possible, trying to show compassion to, you know, as many people as possible, or just as much as possible, regardless of, you know, in other words, there doesn't need to be something there for me to practice compassion for. In other words, everybody deserves compassion. I'm not getting that quite right, like I'm saying it, and so that's something too. I've been doing, you know, a little bit of reading, a little bit more focus on working on the heart chakra. Like I say, sometimes there's a couple of Buddhist practices that I like about practicing compassion. There's one, it's kind of a meditation where you start with, you know, with yourself, talking about how, you know, being compassionate with yourself, and then you just extend out from that. First you're compassionate with yourself, then you're compassionate with the people you love, then you're compassionate with people you're neutral against, then you're compassionate with people that actually, or you could technically be your enemies or mean you harm. I've got a little reading today on the releasing of judgment, and I'll try to remember, like, I've gotten pretty good about it lately, to share this link in the description below. It's from Tiny Buddha, and it's by someone, I don't know if this is a man or a woman, Tiela Garnett, but I'll try to put that below. And the title is Releasing Judgment and Allowing Others to Have Their Process. Judge nothing, you will be happy. Forgive everything, you will be happier. Love everything, you will be happiest. Sri Chinmoy. We live in a world of judgment. We qualify everything in varying degrees of right and wrong, good and bad, pretty and ugly. We are taught from earliest childhood to judge everything and everyone. We label our days consistently using adjectives like beautiful or horrible. Even the weather is not immune. The presence of judgment is pervasive in our lives, yet subtle enough in some cases to pass unnoticed. I have worked for years at ridding my life of all judgment, but it's far easier said than done. Just when I begin to think I've eradicated all traces of the poison, it pops up again, wearing a new disguise. One of the most valuable lessons of my life was witnessing the presence of judgment when I least expected it. Many of us on a so-called spiritual path find ourselves sorely challenged when we observe the suffering of those around us. This was especially true for me when my mother was dying. In the last days of my mother's life, she was in severe physical pain. It's hard for me to put into words the extent of my discomfort as I watched her and the effect it had on my personal belief system. For years, I had lived with the belief that all is well, that regardless of any appearance of disharmony, there is a destiny, a plan, order in this great universe of ours. As my mother lay dying, I could not reconcile the image of her suffering with that belief system. I found myself regressing to the questions I had lived with throughout adolescence. Why is there suffering in the world? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is my mother being punished this way? This isn't fair. For many years now, I've been blessed with the good fortune of having an individual in my life whom I can count on for perspectives of peace in moments when I'm floundering. I called him up as I was thrashing around in this confused mindset. No sooner had I finished telling him how unjust it was that my mother was suffering in this way than he knocked the wind out of me by saying, "Tiela, stop judging your mother's process." The words floored me. Judging? Was I really judging what my mother was going through? Yes. Not only was I judging it, I was condemning it, and in some sense condemning her life. In fact, all of life going along with it. I was not even respecting that there might be wisdom or a divine plan operating in my mother's experience that I was unable to see. I had decided that even though I wasn't in my mother's shoes, I knew better than she did, better than her higher self, better than the universe. I knew that what she was going through was bad and wrong. Furthermore, by deciding that my mother was experiencing something against her will, I was seeing her as a helpless victim instead of an evolving being on a path of consciousness. At the very least, I was doing my mother a disservice. Potentially, I was even adding to her pain. The minute I became aware of what I was doing, I was able to stop by realizing that my attitude was actually doing harm to this person that I loved. It's never pleasant to witness what we call suffering, but it's a form of arrogance to assume we really know what's going on and whether or not it's necessary for someone else's life. Truthfully, it isn't any of our business. Our job is to walk our separate paths with presence and awareness, to be available for people when they ask for our assistance, and when they don't, to allow them to have their process. I am certainly not suggesting we live our lives without compassion, but there is a world of difference between compassion and pity. The former is an expression of love that emanates from respecting a person's essence. The latter is a cloying, negative emotion, toxic in nature, and void of all respect. Pity is one of the many clever disguises judgment wears. In fact, it is impossible to pity someone without seeing them in a position that is inferior to our own. Such an attitude is just judgment, pure and simple. The only way we can truly assist anyone in a challenging process is by releasing all judgment and seeing her or him for the empowered being that they truly are. Now, this is a little bit, I imagine some people, as I was reading that, like, okay, well, what's that? That's a little bit different. It's a different form of judgment, but it just kind of, it brought it home to me, what I'm talking about. Even though I'm not, like a lot of times, I'm judging in my head. But there's a process. I mean, there's just something that puts that vibe out into the universe. I mean, even when I'm just judging, I'm looking at things wrong. And, it just offers a brand new perspective to me. But that's just something I work on every day. I find myself, and sometimes I think it might just be because, I spend so much time by myself. I'm in my own head, and I can be a little snarky when I go out in public. Like I see that person over there doing something, I'm like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And I have like this little running dialogue. It's not as serious, like I say, sometimes it's just a form of just, it's in lieu of conversation, which I don't have very much of. But every time I'm stepping out, I'm becoming more and more aware of this. Every time I catch myself judging someone, something, some situation, I try to take a step back and get a fresh perspective on it. And with the compassion, I'm just really trying, and it's always going to be a work in progress to just show compassion. Not be like, it's not like somebody deserves my compassion or they have to do something to deserve my compassion. Just show the compassion, and by showing that compassion, it opens up my heart chakra even more. And if you want to get down to not being so altruistic, it still benefits you, because when you feel like this, you just actually feel better. And there's no other way, there's no fancy way to put it other than that. When I'm being more compassionate, when I'm being more mindful of how I think of others, situations, and the world around me, I just simply feel better, more content, and happier. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this one today. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.